Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast. This is the #1 home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
Well, welcome to the show. This is your host, Mike Walters, along with my co-host, Eddie Richard. And this is the Thanksgiving edition of the Ducks and Pucks podcast. Eddie and I had some scheduling stuff come up during the week, obviously, as I'm sure a lot of you out there had as well with the holiday week. So we decided to do the show after Thanksgiving. So I hope that all of you had a good and safe holiday. And we're going to break down a lot of stuff on this show, plenty to cover. We're going to start off with the Hathaway suspension and kind of what we think about it. A lot of you weighed in on that and had an opinion, so we're going to cover that first. We'll then go over the games, some of the road trip that they played at the end there. And then, of course, they've been at home for a couple of the last games. We'll talk about all those. The Black Friday disaster again, and we'll go into the history of that for the last couple seasons. And then the middle segment's really going to cover a lot about the team as far as the coaching, the lineup, things that could be done, you know, pretty much differently. Eddie and I are not head coaches or GMs, but we're going to weigh in on a lot of stuff that we think the Ducks could do outside of trading for somebody. I know we've talked about that on a couple podcasts before. And then we'll finish up with league news. And yes, Taylor Hall is going to be in there again. We'll talk about that and weigh in on him as well. So we'll definitely cover some trade rumors. But this show, we're really going to focus on the Ducks and what they need to do to really get the ship kind of going in the right direction. So that's kind of our roadmap. Eddie will kind of start out with the Hathaway thing. I do have to make a quick announcement, though, that I was wrong on our last show. We had Robert Morales that pointed out on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/DucksNPucks podcast. But I guess when we talked about the Hathaway incident with Goodbranson, we were talking about whether or not the initial part of the play should have been charging or interference. And it was actually Leipzig that did the initial hit, not Hathaway. So I apologize for that. I said that on the last show. But you know what, Eddie? I was probably seeing red when we were talking about that podcast. So I blamed Hathaway for everything on that play. But anyways, we'll break that down. So Hathaway ended up getting suspended for 3 games. And most of you out there, we did our little podcast poll, kind of an informal one this time, but most of you were happy with the suspension, but then a lot of you questioned the length of it. So what did you think, Eddie, after the fact now? Like we said, we talked about it in the last show. You saw what happened. And by the way, Hathaway did apologize after the fact, but he did finally apologize for the incident and took some ownership for it, though he didn't initially. But what do you think about the whole thing, Eddie, with the suspension and his, after-the-fact apology?
Well, I want to just say that I'm sure you were seeing red. I was too after that incident, and I think it was just accidentally spat out of your mouth those words of the wrong player. So, you know what? I think the suspension is good, and I agreed with it. Maybe a little bit more. But I wouldn't want him to miss the December 6th game, I believe they're playing against the Capitals when they come to Honda Center. He has some ice justice to be served, and it's going to be disappointing if no one goes after him. I'm not saying go and injure the player, but no, you drop the gloves and you're going to answer for what you've done. If you kick his ass, cool. If he kicks your ass, at least you went and stood up for yourself, especially Goodbranson. And like I keep saying, I don't understand how people can justify anyone spitting on anyone. It's just like I said last show. I'm beating a dead duck again, but it's one of the most disrespectful things you can do to a player, and I just hope he has to answer to it come next week when the Capitals come into town.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was the main concern, was the length of the suspension. To me, I felt 5 to 10 games would have been better. That was my whole take on that. I don't think 3 games was enough. If they would have done 5 games, he still would have been able to play in this game upcoming, like you said, where, the Ducks are going to be playing the Kings and Capitals this week. So if they need some added motivation after a bunch of these losses, they're going to have some of it. So that's what I feel. I'm glad he got suspended. 3 games, my take is it could have been more. Just as Eddie said too as well. So a lot of you weighed in on it. A lot of you felt the same way too on our Facebook kind of informal poll. You felt that it should have been more games. Only a couple of you thought 1 game or 3 games was okay, but we're with you on that one. Most of you agreed that it should have been more. At least he was suspended, though, I guess is, the good part of that. So that happened. The Ducks were still in the middle of their road trip, and they had a couple more games to play. They went to the great state of Florida. They had to take on the Panthers and the Lightning. They ended up losing both of these games. I think the one in Florida is the one that really pissed me off the most. The Ducks got off to, I guess, their best start, you could say, of the entire season. They had a goal by Max Jones in the first period. And then they had goals by Nick Ritchie, Raquel, and Kasha in the second period, including a power play goal, which we'll talk about the power play too later in the show. And
wait, what, Mike?
I know.
I didn't hear that. Did you say the PP word? Wow.
Yeah. There was a power play goal in this game, which we will go over that, and we will talk about why the power play is having some issues and things that we think could rectify it. So you're right. They got a rare power play goal. So the Ducks are up 4-0 in this game. Okay, and just under 2 minutes to go in the second period. So you're thinking, okay, yeah, the Ducks are probably going to end out this period. They're going to be at 4-0. Yeah, we got this. We're gonna destroy Florida, right? Well, some guy named Brett Connolly said, nah, I don't think so. He scores 2 goals in less than 30 seconds, and the Ducks lead now goes from 4-0 to 4-2 going in the third. And Florida ends up getting a couple goals in the third, ties the game, and forces overtime. The Ducks lose in overtime. So the Ducks went from 4-0 with less than 2 minutes to go in the second period to losing this game 5-4 in overtime. And I don't know, Eddie. I just think this game was probably the most frustrating game outside of maybe that Detroit game we were talking about earlier. But you have a 4-goal lead 38 plus minutes into the game, and you lose. I mean, it's just, this is unacceptable. I mean, Eddie and I are on the show. We talk about the Ducks. We're huge Ducks fans, but we got to be realistic too. I don't care. This is unacceptable, Eddie. What did you think about the debacle against the Panthers?
Well, in the case of the Anaheim Ducks being up 4-0 and we're about to win the game, I guess Brett Connolly determined that was a lie. That was so freaking frustrating. I was like, what are you guys doing? You guys are playing a team that came back in their last game down by 4 and beat the other team. Off the top of my head, I don't know. I don't really care. But you let them walk right in and steal this game. Like, you had every Ducks fan happy. Mike, I was doing my 28 day of non-drinking just for personal reasons, and I almost went upstairs and cracked open a bottle and just started drinking. I was just so pissed off. And then even matter on top of it, I was covering this game and writing the recap. So I was like, oh, you know how angry I was just typing this recap? Just one finger, just each little button. Tap, tap, tap. They felt that after, Florida scored, I guess, they just put their tail between their legs and kind of just took it. It was so frustrating. And like, people that listen to the show, I'm going to revert back to this Philadelphia game last season. This was probably the most frustrating. This is actually the most frustrating game of this season, and I really hope that's it. But Mike, they can't operate like that. You had this game in the bag. It was an open present. It was free. It was a free game. You could have got 2 points. No, you let them walk right in. You scouted this team. You knew what they did a game before coming back for a 4-goal lead. And no, you just took your foot off the pedal and kind of just coasted and let them come back. And I know a lot of the players are talking about a 60-minute game, and Getzlaf was saying something about how not every game the players are going to be a full 60 minutes. Yeah, I get that, but you're not going to be like making great plays or making smart passes or being in that moment for 60 minutes, but at least play the damn game. There's no excuse to blowing a 4-goal lead no matter what. You can say the stars weren't online. You can make up every excuse. You have 4 goals. So the only thing you have to blame is yourselves and each individual player that was playing. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, they let it slip away, like you said, and I mentioned it several times. The Ducks will play, 40 minutes of a game, and then 20 minutes, not so much. This one, I guess, 21 and a half minutes or so. I mean, it's just frustrating. They really own this. I remember I wasn't at home at the time, but I was watching the game on my phone because I have the Fox Sports West app, and I can watch it through my cable provider. So I was watching that game, and I was like, "Oh yeah, 4-0, we got this." And then they started getting a couple goals. I'm watching my phone. I'm getting more and more mad during this game. But like you said, they let off the gas, and you just can't do that with any team. You're up 4-0. If you're going to play defense and clog up the neutral zone for the final period, fine, but they didn't do that. They gave up chances, and Florida came back. They got, a couple goals in the third, and it's just disappointing. And then, of course, overtime 3-on-3, we're not good at that, so you knew that was kind of going to be bad, and then, of course, it was. Florida scores, just 22 seconds into the overtime, and they win. So, I get the rebuilding and retooling, but I really don't care what team you have, whether it's a bunch of young players or veteran players. You're up 4-0 with the second period about to end. And even with giving up those 2 goals and giving the momentum back to Florida, the Ducks still should have won this game, Eddie.
Oh, yeah. Man. I was just thinking that this was going to be a nice little coast win. Like, all right, cool. The Ducks needed that after that game against Washington, all the emotions. And all right, cool. The Ducks are responding. They're pissed off. But nope, they just, like I said, they let Florida claw their way back into this game. And you can't really, you can't give teams an opportunity like that. A goal is so easy to be scored within seconds. Well, not really easy, but they can score quick. And with the Ducks, they're having an infamous trend of giving up a lead, going up by a few goals, and then just tanking. So it's one of these games that hopefully the Ducks don't forget. I hope this is the back of their mind, like, hey, next time they go up to 3 or 4 goal lead, hey, remember for that Florida game, let's not hold back. Let's keep playing our game and just keep that pedal on the metal. Who cares if you get that speeding ticket, as long as you get the 2 points.
Yeah, and that's what happened in the Tampa Bay game too. So, after they lost to the Panthers, they played the Lightning. In this game, Lightning got a bounce early on. They had a shot that hit Miller and sat in the crease, and Point batted it in. Then the Ducks get a break. They're shorthanded. They try to clear the puck. It hits the ref, lands on Grant's stick. Grant breaks in all alone, scores. It's 1-1. Kucherov scores early in the second to make it 2-1 Tampa, but then Raquel answers back. It's 2-2. And the Ducks are playing competitive hockey for the 30 minutes of this game. They're not. This wasn't a bad game, but they're tied 2-2 halfway through the game, and then the second half they just fall apart. They end up giving 3 power play goals against. You had Point gets another goal in the second period on the power play, and then Tampa Bay gets 2 more power play goals in the third, and the Ducks are just done in this game. I mean, the final score, you look at it, was 6-2. But the Ducks didn't play that bad. I mean, they outshot Tampa Bay 38-27, but it just was the second half of the game. They once they got down by a couple goals, it was just over. And again, looking at special teams, the Ducks had 3 power plays in this game, big 0. Lightning had 4 power plays, and they scored on 3 of them. That was a huge difference in this game, Eddie. I think 5-on-5, the Ducks played a decent game, but when it came to the special teams play, which we've seen all season, the Ducks really struggled.
Oh, definitely. And the Lightning are a fantastic team. They're an all-around great team. They have that grit with Maroon. They have that speed. It looked like a clinic out there. They were just practicing for fun against the Ducks. And the Ducks didn't play too bad, minus not converting on the power plays. They kept up with them, for the first half. But, I mean, experience comes in, and that talent and that superstarness comes in. And they have players... they're a dangerous top. I think they're probably the most dangerous top 9 forward team in the league. They can get goals out of everywhere, and of course Maroon scores. I think Maroon has like the most points he's ever scored against the Ducks. But I mean, you can't really get mad and you can't pout about this loss because that team is far better than the Ducks in every point, and not just on paper but on play too. So I was just happy to see the Ducks just be able to hang in there for the time they did. But experience and talent, kind of beat them out.
Yeah, that's what happened. I mean, the Ducks should have had actually a power play goal in this game. Raquel did score right after the penalty expired. But, obviously you got to go by the 2 minutes. So it was like 2 minutes and 1 second when he scored. So the Ducks might have had one. But, yeah, you bring up Maroon, and I always crack up because that's one of the players we talked about, in the offseason. The Ducks should have gone out and got, and they didn't. And he signed a cheap deal with Tampa Bay. And here he is scoring a goal against the Ducks. I mean, it's just a frustrating game all the way around. But you're right. This game I didn't expect the Ducks to win. So when halfway through, I was happy. I was like, okay, it's 2-2. They're playing competitive. Maybe they could force overtime in this game. And then the special teams play just went down the toilet. And they took too many penalties, which we've seen too. The Ducks have been a little bit too undisciplined at key moments. And that's part of being a young team. So that happened. So the Ducks road trip wasn't the best. The highlight of the road trip was they beat the Blues, the defending Stanley Cup champs. Then they had these two games, and so you're thinking, okay, what the Ducks could turn this around. But I mean, they then had the Islanders come to town, who the Islanders hadn't lost a game in regulation in 17 games. And you're thinking, oh great, how are the Ducks going to play? Well, the Ducks win this game. They actually knock out the Islanders 3-0, and they played solid defense. They held the Islanders after the first period when they had a lot of shots, and it looked like the Islanders were maybe going to have a chance to score. They had 16 shots in the first period, but the Ducks held them to just 10 shots and the rest of the way. And Eddie, they played well against Florida, not so well against Tampa, and then they play well against the Islanders, and they win this game. I mean, this team is just so confusing at times.
Oh, definitely. I was going to interject just to go back a little bit on that Tampa Bay game. Speaking of Maroon, I had a little funny story I wanted to share. I think it was a few years ago when Maroon, I think he was with the Oilers, and he had a fight against the Ducks. And I made a comment on Facebook and tagged one of my Kings fan friend about, Maroon's gonna get his ass kicked. Well, lo and behold, Maroon's family member responded back to me. It was like kind of like going back and forth, like, oh, he'll beat you up too. I'm like, what the heck? But he was just in playful fun, and a lot of the guys I used to play hockey with, they played with Maroon and played against him, so they know him and his family. So it was just funny that I made a comment and I tagged my buddy, and then Maroon's family member came back, and we were just going back and forth about it. But it was all in good fun. I just wanted to share that. I think it was kind of funny, a good little memory I have of Maroon. To go back in present time against the Islanders game, it was just an all-around great game. The Islanders seemed to have a lot more pressure on them, and the Ducks didn't. The Ducks were just coming in there expecting to lose. That's what everyone was, kind of pinning on them, and they came out and they just played hockey. They played a good structured game, and the Islanders were so just pressed on preserving their point streak and their win streak. The pressure got to them, and they buckled, and the Ducks capitalized on that. And it was just a great game. It was a good one to see. The fans were there, and it was Hockey Fight Cancer Night, and that's even special for a lot of the cancer survivors or people that know someone battling that. Our game day program was dedicated to Joe Chavez and the rest of the cancer survivors. If you guys don't know Joe Chavez, he is a testicular cancer survivor, and he plays for the San Diego Ducks sled hockey team as a goaltender. He was playing in a tournament that week, and unfortunately did not win the tournament. But he's just a great inspiration, and he's always positive. He's always happy. He was thrilled to have his photo and us share his story. And he messaged me saying, thanks for all the support and stuff. And, I think he's one of those people that are he's a hero. He's my hero. I don't know if I can deal and be that strong if I had to deal with the stuff he's had to deal with. And it's just, someone like him, it's just good. He's strong. He represents the game, and I love it. And it was so happy, and I made sure I try to make that graphic as best as I can to honor him and everyone else. We also did our DucksNPucks, our logo too, and I wanted to incorporate all the other banners of cancer. I know a few people tweeted out to us what forms of cancer that they're dealing with, and they wanted to see that specific color represent their form of cancer they're battling with. And I did that with the ribbons. I try to get everyone, and I'm sorry if I missed anyone. I did the overall cancer, I guess the universal color cancer, the ribbon a little bigger, and also did the orange one. Not because the orange ducks, but I had a cousin and a family member, another uncle, die of leukemia, and orange is the leukemia thing, so I made that a little bigger too, just in memory of them. But yeah, Mike, it was a great game, and I mean, it's one of those games I wish I would have went to. And it's unfortunate I had to just sit behind a TV and watch it, but it was a good game, and I was hoping the Ducks were going to trend upward after that.
Yeah, absolutely. And anybody out there that's dealing with cancer, our hearts go out to you. We've donated time and money over the years to anybody dealing with it. And I know that if it doesn't affect you, I know maybe there's a family member or friend that you may have or have had that dealt with it. So anybody out there dealing with it, we obviously give you all of the support that we can and hope that that turns around for that person or persons. So like you said, yeah, the game in person was great. The Ducks, won this one. With Kasha's celebration on the third goal, the Ducks got back-to-back goals there. That was awesome to see him flying in the air. I joked on the post. I said, "It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Kasha." I thought that was funny. A little take on the Superman there. So people seem to enjoy that. But yeah, the Ducks, the first period, like I said, they didn't play so great. They gave up 16 shots, but they got out of the period tied 0-0. And then they really turned it on after that opening period. They only allowed 10 shots in the next 40 minutes. I mean, that was outstanding defensive work by the Ducks finally. They did also get back, Lindholm too in a couple of these games. He didn't really have his best stuff in that Tampa Bay game when he came back. A couple plays there where he didn't look so good, but he looked a little bit better in this game. So it was nice to see him come back because the Ducks have been struggling on defense. Like I said, the Tampa game, not so much. I think he was a little rusty. He then played pretty good in this game against the Islanders. And then the Ducks went on a quick road trip because they're going out to Arizona to play the Coyotes. And they played a decent game, but they ended up losing this one in a shootout, the only shootout the Ducks have had this season. But they gave up a power play goal, of course, in the opening 3 minutes of this game to Dvorak. Gooley got his first NHL goal in this game, sandwiched between the Dvorak goals. You also had Sam Steele and Troy Terry scoring in this game. So, I mean, the Ducks, they had a 3-2 lead in the third period, and it looked like the Ducks might win this game with the lead. Then they give up the tying goal in the third right after the Troy Terry goal. They go into overtime. They actually don't screw up in the overtime, but they go to the shootout and lose. I didn't think this was necessarily a bad game for the Ducks, Eddie. It was nice seeing the kids starting to get going because they haven't been scoring so much. But again, the Ducks, had a quick, lead for like 30-something seconds and blew it. And they got a point again, but they ended up losing this game.
Oh, yeah. It was just a lot of people were frustrated saying, I saw some tweets like, "Oh, I can't believe we lost to not Florida, but the Phoenix, or Arizona, my bad. Sorry. Too much Pink Whitney." But you know what? The Coyotes are a really great team now. They developed, they drafted well, and they have some key players, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And they're not the old team from before. They're a really quick team, and they know how to put that puck in the back of the net. They have a lot of young guys that can do that. This game, I wasn't all too mad because we had a lot of our youth scoring. I think all the goals, Steele, Terry, Gooley, that's a positive. That's great. Once all those players can get going, it's going to be lights out for the Ducks. Maybe not this season. They're still finding their game and they're still finding their way in the NHL. But once they develop properly, they're going to be great. Gooley, it was so funny. Everyone thought it was Terry's goal at first because it's just one of those awkward plays. He throws it on net, so he didn't really celebrate it that much. He was just like, I think Troy Terry celebrated a little bit more than he did, so he didn't really know. It came like to the second period. We're like, oh, it was Gooley's goal, and even the Ducks official social media team posted too. It was Terry's goal, so it was one of those funny things. But Troy Terry was actually buzzing this game. He was going around. He was just everywhere in this game. He almost won it too in overtime. He just hit the post, unfortunately. But it went to the shootout, and I think it was the first shootout this season for the Ducks. And just unfortunately, they didn't really capitalize on that, and they couldn't get past the Coyotes goaltender, and we took a loss. But you really can't be mad about this. Yeah, the only frustrating part was they had their first lead of the game, and then 38 seconds later they give up the game-tying goal, and which ultimately led to overtime and then Coyotes winning. So that's the only frustrating thing about this game.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add is probably the power play, 0 for 3, shocker. But the power play has been terrible. So I mean, the Ducks did outshoot the Coyotes 34-28. They won the faceoff battle 61% to 39. A lot of good stuff going on in this game. I did think it was interesting in the shootout. Kasha had a shot that went off the goalie's leg pad and then back in, and they had to review it. And I was like, come on, man. Like, that's a goal. Why are you guys even reviewing this? So that was kind of a funny play there that extended the shootout. But then, of course, Dvorak, the one who got a couple goals in the game, gets the shootout game winner and the Ducks lose. So, I mean, it is what it is. I think the bright spot is, yes, the Ducks got a point. Yes, a lot of the young players did better in this game, finally getting some guys that were scoring and whatnot. So it wasn't terrible. I mean, they had beaten the Islanders, in their crazy streak of 17 games without losing in regulation. They came into this one, and they got behind and were able to come back and then get a lead for a brief amount of time, and they ended up getting a point. So I wasn't too upset about this game. I mean, I felt they could have got 2 points, but I think they did play a decent game. Not probably as good as they did against the Islanders, but still, well enough to at least get a point. So, with that, the Ducks then returned home for Black Friday, and they played the Jets. Eddie was there with me at the game. We sat there. I had a whole big group of people. The last couple times they've had these Black Friday games, I've had probably about 24 friends and family and other Ducks and Pucks supporters go to the game. And, last year they beat Edmonton, but this year they played the Jets, and they lost this game 3-0. It was not really a good game. There was some excitement in the beginning because Kasha got knocked down early, and Gabranson, took exception, got into a little fight there. It was really all Gabranson doing all the swinging, but he pretty much it wasn't really much of a fight, but there was a lot of animosity in that first period. A lot of things going on. It was 0-0. The Ducks are still playing decent, and then Richie gets called at the end of the period for a charging penalty, which is kind of interesting because we were talking about Leipzig and his whole charging issue back with the Hathaway, Gudbranson, and all that nonsense against the Capitals. So he gets called for that, and then of course the Jets score on that power play at the beginning of the second period, which really irritated me. I thought that penalty call on Richie was weak. Richie has taken a lot of dumb penalties this season, as we've all talked about and you've all ranted about. I felt that one wasn't a bad penalty. I posted the video of it up there, and almost all of you were like, really, that's a penalty? So, of course, add insult to injury, they score on the power play. They get another goal halfway through the second. The Jets get up by 2, and then it's kind of, we'll talk about it a little bit, but pretty much game over at that point. The Ducks don't really show up in the third. They give up a goal early, and they lose this game 3-0, Eddie. But I wasn't, that call was kind of iffy, but I was more disappointed with this team. Once they got down 2-0, it just seemed like they just kind of mailed it in, and they really didn't come out in the third period and do a whole lot other than give up a goal right away.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. You just feel the energy too, being at Honda Center. Once that they scored, when Ehlers scored that second goal, it was just done. It's like, oh come on, guys. That first period was exciting. Gudbranson beat the crap out of that one dude. I don't even know his name. I don't even care. I don't even think that guy knows his name right now. But that's what hockey's about. You take a run at Kasha, and he had to leave the ice, go to the locker room temporarily. I'm guessing it's concussion protocol to make sure he was okay. He returned back shortly after, but hey, you have to answer for a hit like that. It's part of the game, and Gudbranson really just kicked his ass. And then he gets a 10-minute misconduct. He gets 2 10-minute misconducts because he's breathing or something. But you know what? It was frustrating. I was pissed off about this game, but I was happy. I was there with Mike. Thank you for inviting me to the game and bringing me. And then everyone I ran into, Jen, Sharon, everyone else. It was just fun. It was a good environment, and despite the loss, I had a good time. I wish it would have been maybe 4 goals the other way, 4-3 overtime win. With maybe a goalie fight that I've been hoping that would happen when I'm at a live game, but I mean, damn, this was kind of tough too. Winnipeg's losing, their best defenseman is gone, and they just come out, and after that second goal, the Ducks didn't really seem to play, and like I said before, the whole energy was just sucked out of the team, and even in Honda Center too. It's like, come on, it's like everyone knew the Ducks were done after that, and it's unfortunate. Kyle Connor scores, and that's pretty much the game.
Yeah, the only thing I didn't like was early in the first period. It looked like the Ducks had scored. Max Jones was pushing at the puck. Hellebuck was trying to cover it. The puck actually ends up in the net. The refs review the play. They come out and they say, hey, the whistle was blown before the puck crossed the line. So they admit that the puck crossed the line. And I went back and rewatched this. As I told some of you out there, you know, we do the podcast and stuff, but when there's games that we go in person, a lot of times I'll come home and rewatch certain parts of the game just to see if there's something different, because at the arena, obviously, you don't get all the angles sometimes. Or sometimes at home when you're watching, they'll say something that obviously I don't know because I'm there watching it and I don't have any announcers, right? So I watched that play at home, and I don't know. I think the refs got it wrong. They actually blew the whistle after the puck went in the net. And I understand the whole part about, well, it's whenever the ref intends to blow the whistle. I get that part. Okay, whatever. But to me, I don't think that they should have talked about the whole whistle thing. I think they should have discussed whether or not it was goalie interference or not. That's what I felt, that should have decided that goal or not. And to me, watching the replays, it's hard. It's not conclusive, using that big term that everybody uses now for replays. But that puck is, it's sitting there in the crease area, and Jones whacks at it while Hellebuck's trying to put his glove on it, and then the puck goes in the net. I mean, to me, it's either goalie interference or it's a goal. It's one or the other here. I just thought that the refs took the cheesy way out by saying, well, we blew the whistle even though the puck went over the line. That really irritated me. I wish they would have at least said, hey, it's a goal, or no, it's not because of goalie interference, and then, try and do a challenge or something. We didn't even get to that point. They just totally cut it out, Eddie. And that just kind of frustrated me because, hey, if the Ducks would have gotten a goal right there, maybe we wouldn't talk about them losing this game. I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to say that whole play determined the game, but it's just frustrating when they took a, kind of a wimpy way out, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. And the officials, it's getting worse every season. And I really don't like to wish any hurt on anyone, but I really think these refs deserve a wake-up call, a puck to the mouth, to eat a puck. Or something. They're just making some trash calls, and it seemed like this game, and I'm not trying to just use that, little scapegoat of them, but it seems like they were out for the Ducks and just calling some really questionable calls. Richie's apparently charging call, and the guy had the that wasn't charging. It was a nice clean hit by Richie. Regardless if that would have been goalie interference or not. I mean, let's go back to the San Jose game when you saw a player literally get his stick and push Gibson's pad past the line, and the puck crossed the line after that, and that wasn't goalie interference. And them, I agree with you. They took the easy way out. Oh, well, we were going to blow the whistle. Like, when? Last week? So you're just going to call it dead right there? It's bad, and I don't know why the NHL isn't looking at this. And it's not just about the Ducks or the other team I watch, the Avalanche, but I watch other games. I'll like, if I'm bored, I'll put whatever games on, and there's always something. Like the referees are like, oh, I watched a Kings game, I watched a Capitals game, I watched the Golden Knights game. It's the definite thing that the refs are going to screw up. Like, I don't know what's going on with them. I don't know if they're drinking too much before the game or not enough. It's just like, man, but this game was more frustrating, and I think, the refs played a part in the Ducks losing. Yeah, the Ducks, didn't play their best, and then when they went down, they just kind of stood down, but I think the refs played a factor in this one, too.
And like you said, Eddie, the refs haven't been kind to the Ducks, in that game against Winnipeg. But, overall, Black Friday games haven't really been good to Anaheim in general. In the last couple of years, the Ducks have played the Chicago Blackhawks 3 times, Winnipeg twice, and Edmonton once. They've lost pretty much all those games except for the one against Edmonton. So maybe the Ducks should change the schedule and play the Oilers every Black Friday moving forward. I don't know, but Black Fridays haven't really been a kind event for the Ducks when they play on that day. So that'll wrap up this segment. This podcast is sponsored by Cool Hockey. You should check out their website. They have a sale going on right now. If you enter in the code BLACK30, that's BLACK30, you can get 30% off their purchase. And if you want a $200 gift card, you could sign up on patreon.com/DucksNPucks. If you donate just $1 a month, you have a chance at winning a $200 gift card. We give away every single month on there. So if you want to support us, help keep the show going as well, please do that. With that, we'll move to the next major section that we're going to talk about. A lot of this is going to focus on the Ducks and the team, the way they've been playing, the coaching, the mentality, the lineups, a lot of stuff we're going to get to. With what's going on with the Ducks, I guess, Eddie, you have to say, what the Duck is going on with this team. And we'll break it down first off, talking about the offense. Some of the things, that I think that maybe the Ducks could do to improve and change. And we'll offer up some of these. And if you agree or disagree, you're always welcome to comment on social media or YouTube channel as well. But for me, looking at the offense, we know the Ducks have had ups and downs this season. One of the things I would like to see, Eddie, is that Raquel gets put back with Silverberg and Henrique. I really felt that line had a lot of chemistry. I think that that's something the Ducks should look at. And then changing up the Getzlaf line, I'd like to see maybe Max Jones thrown up on there. He's starting to score some goals lately. Kasha obviously is kind of getting back in a rhythm too. And that's one thing I just think that would help this team is the top six, I think, need to be changed, especially that Raquel, Silverberg, Henrique line. They were doing so well. I just don't like splitting them up. What do you think as far as the offense, Eddie, outside of trades, which we'll talk a little bit about the Taylor Hall news at the end of the show, but just as far as the team as they are rostered right now, what do you think about the Ducks trying to change up that first and second line or any of the offensive lines for that matter?
Well, I don't think they should change up the second line at all. It was working, and chemistry is everything. You don't have to be the most skilled player in the world, but as long as you have that chemistry, you can do a lot of damage. It doesn't matter. It's just one of those plays where you're too frustrated to look up that extra second. Knowing that someone's going to be in a certain spot, you can just not even look and blindly pass, knowing that your line mate's going to be there. And I think that's important in hockey, especially when teams are more of a gritty effect. We saw with the Washington Capitals, they didn't give you that time and space. They were all up in your face. So sometimes it's just you don't have that extra second to take up, to look to see where your line mate is. And when you have that chemistry like that with those players that can be there, and you know exactly where they're going to be without even looking, you can just close your eyes and pass and know the player's going to be there. That's really important. I get it. Cool. Raquel's playing great, and him being a top line center, it's just what he's supposed to be. But I mean, it's all about chemistry, and you can't break up a group of players that are playing well. I look at that 1980s USA Olympic team. They weren't the greatest, but for some reason they had a lot of chemistry together, and certain lines just clicked because they knew exactly how they played. I like Mac Jones up with Ryan Getzlaf. The games I've seen him play with Getzlaf, they seem to have that chemistry. I forgot what game it was when the first goal was scored. It's Getzlaf from Jones from Getzlaf. They just connected and clicked really well. And yeah, I know not Getzlaf, but Jones had his issues before he got sent down. It kind of changed his mindset. He came back up and he's playing some great hockey. So that's one thing I would like to see. The only thing missing is just a solidified left winger on that line, someone that can play and can get into those dirty areas and produce. And we've been lacking a potential top left wing center for a while, or left wing for a while. Even when we had Getzlaf and Perry on the top line, we still have that void right there. So we have to be filled. As far as trades goes, yeah, we'll talk about that later. But I don't think a trade is something that the Ducks should do right now. But we need to find someone that can stick on that top line and they can just generate some chemistry.
Yeah, that's been an issue for the Ducks, ongoing for seasons on end. If you look at the Ducks in terms of their players down in San Diego, some of them that they could bring up, we talked a lot about Sherwood before. He's got 6 goals and 7 assists in 14 games with San Diego. You've also got Sprong down there. He's got 5 goals and 8 assists in 18 games. So there's a couple players the Ducks could bring up maybe to do some damage and help on the offense. You remember Comtois was sent back down. He's got 6 assists in 8 games, so maybe he needs a little bit more this season, unfortunately. Remember, he started out pretty good last year. But, there's a possibility, Eddie, that maybe the Ducks bring up some of these players. Right now they do have a couple empty roster spots. They currently have 21 on the roster with Larson being sent down, which we'll talk about in a second. So they do have room for 2 more players to come up. And I think that they should try to bring up one of these guys. I think Sherwood may be my first pick and maybe Sprong second, but I would bring one of them up and throw them in the mix. Terry's been hit or miss this season. Maybe he needs to either go down or be benched for a game here or there, and give one of these guys a chance and maybe mix it up a little bit and see, hey, they've gotten goals down there. Maybe they can produce, because something has to change. The Ducks need a little bit more oomph. Like you said, that second line chemistry was there with Raquel. Put him back. Maybe bring up one of the younger guys and maybe see where that leads us.
Yeah, I like the bringing Sprong up. I think he's been playing well down there. The only problem is if we bring him up, we can't just send him down without having all the other teams bid on him and get him for free. And I think with that case, Ducks probably would want to use him as trade bait, and I can't see Sprong having more of a future with the Anaheim Ducks this season or in the future period. I think he'll be traded. They're using him just kind of for trade bait. Obviously, he didn't work out, which he showed glimpses of scoring. Those angle shots that he did, he passed geometry with an A+, because some of the goals he scored were just amazing. And I just, I can't see them bringing him up. Comtois, I think he needs a little bit more time in San Diego. He played well last season, and he's shown what he can do, and he's a projected, I want to say, a top forward, and he can do some damage. A nice little power forward that can put up those numbers and produce. I think Sherwood would be a good pickup for us. He surprised everyone. No one even knew his name last season until he made the Ducks roster, and he played well, and he's played decent. I think he's working hard, and he's playing some good hockey down in San Diego. So I like to see him get an opportunity. And with the Ducks' offensive problem, especially on the power play, why not bring someone up that can possibly, help out and have that fire and bring that extra energy that the Ducks need this season?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about the power play too in a minute. Of course, as soon as you mention power play, I'm sure all of you listening just roll your eyes, because the power play has just been so bad this season. But I agree with you. I mean, I think the Ducks should try and bring up somebody. They've got roster spots open, try and give a jump to the offense. And I think they should do the same thing defensively. It was kind of funny. I was talking to Braden, who does our editing for our podcast. And right before we recorded the show, we were talking about Holzer and Larson, and we were saying, hey, they need to send somebody down, stop playing both these guys. And then ironically, the team did send Larson down to San Diego. So I guess they kind of listened to us partially, maybe, or we did some ESP or something. I don't know, but something worked. They sent Larson down, which did create that second opening on the roster. As I said earlier, they have 21 spots right now as we record the show. So I think that another one that they should bring up for sure is Mahura. He did great. He had 3 assists in that one game. He seemed to be playing pretty well and gelling with the Ducks team defensively. So that's another one. I would bring up one of those guys on offense. I'd bring him up on defense. And I'd stop playing Holzer and Larson. Going forward, obviously Larson's in San Diego now, but the Ducks should not be playing both those guys in a game together, period. It just hasn't worked out well. We saw the game against Detroit, Eddie and I were really irritated when they're both out there in the final minutes of the game. We knew Lindholm and Manson were out in that game, but Fowler wasn't out there. And we'll talk about coaching in a second too, but they just both shouldn't be there. So I think Larson has been good and bad at different times. They sent him down, which I think is good. And I'd like to see them bring up Mahura as well. So there's a couple options there, Eddie. What do you think, defensively, if the Ducks bring up Mahura, maybe that would help out a little bit too, since Manson's still out.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. He played well. I think the first game he came, he had those 3 assists. He's one of those players, he just head up all the time. He has a great hockey IQ and hockey sense. And he makes great passes. He finds the open man, and especially someone that's streaking above the red line over there, just especially making a change. He just always has his head up and he's aware of what's going on. And yeah, I mean, they're still fine tuning. He's still a rookie. He's not going to be, the best player out there. You expect to see him, being a superstar, but no, he's going to make those those plays, get in those areas, and create chances for players. And with this team, especially on the power play, man, we're gonna talk about that. At this point, I can't even spell power play, being a Ducks fan. But I think he'd be another good player to bring up and see what he's got. Give him that opportunity and that chance. Larson was the Ducks, bread and butter. He's projected to be, a top defenseman, top 4, maybe top 1. He just really hasn't panned out. He's not a bad defenseman at all. He can hang with in the National Hockey League. He's just not going to be a top defenseman. And I don't know if it's not working out with the development of the Ducks, and if he can go somewhere else, change the scenery, and be maybe a top 4. If not, I can't really see him being more than that. He hasn't played bad. Just some games he's on and he's off. It's one of those things where there's no in between. He's not going to be decent. It's just he's really good or he's really bad. So it's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of been the team this whole season. They've been, consistently inconsistent. One area where they've been consistent and unfortunately consistently bad has been the power play. So we're going to talk about that for a little bit here before we talk about kind of the coaching and the team mentality. But the power play has been an issue. Obviously, there's no doubt about that. It's like stating, the obvious. Some of the things that we can talk about improving it. Eddie and I kind of beat this to a dead horse, but getting in front of the net, the Ducks aren't doing that as well. And I also think they should change up the power play unit, either the first or the second unit or both. I really think, and call me crazy, but I think Derek Grant should be thrown in the mix there. In that first power play unit, you have Raquel, Henrique, Silverberg, and Getzlaf out there with Fowler, usually at the defensive player on the first unit. But I feel like they need someone that's going to go in front of the net and get in those dirty areas. So whether it's Raquel, Silverberg, or Henrique, I feel one of those should be rotated out. You put in Derek Grant and get somebody in front of the net that's going to, do the dirty work. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like we talked about earlier, I like Raquel, Henrique, and Silverberg on that second line when they're playing 5-on-5 and doing what they got to do. But something's got to give. They need someone that's going to go into those dirty areas, get in front of the net, cause some havoc, get some deflections and whatnot. And they're just not doing it as much. That's a big thing for me. I mean, they're trying to just be too perfect too sometimes. And I know, Eddie, you want to talk about the way that they kind of set up the power play. It seems like they're not surprising anybody, I think. Right, Eddie? You think that they're a little bit too predictable in the way that they're trying to get the power play set up and create chances.
Oh yeah, definitely. They're so predictable. Just over here watching the game in the stands or in my living room, you can see exactly what they're going to do, and teams are figuring that out quickly. Just like the old dump and chase system they had under Carlisle. Like every team knew what they were going to do. They stopped defending the Ducks. They let them just do it and picked the loose puck and went the other way. The Ducks have a right mindset of what they're trying to do. They're trying to have one forward, drive it up, drop it back to a defender that can drive it in and open up some chances and spread it around, but they're just doing it too soon. It's too premature. Like right when they get out of their own blue line, they're already dropping the puck back, so you're telling the other team what you're gonna do. It's just too soon. Like I know it's a strategy that the Avalanche use. I watch a lot of their games, and they do the same thing when they have a player like McKinnon just using his speed to driving all the way in. He gets right past the red line, right before the opposing team's blue line. Then he drops it to a defender, and they just drive it in, and it opens up everyone else. The Ducks are just doing it too soon. Like maybe try to do it, past the red line and not, when you just barely pass your own blue line. But the power play is a really big problem this season. And it's not just this season. I think last season and the season before that, we just had issues on the special teams. It's causing chaos, and there's games that they could have won and stole. They're just not producing on the power play. They were second to last with 10% on the power play, only 0.7% behind the Ottawa Senators. And I mean, if you guys follow the hockey or NHL, Ottawa Senators don't really have anyone, and they're in a full rebuild, borderline getting sent down to the AHL kind of team. So I no disrespect to the Ottawa Senators, and they're going through their stuff, and they'll have a pretty good team in a few years once they get some draft picks and get some players in there. But I mean, man, the Ducks have a lot of firepower and potential to do something and to put the puck in the back of the net. if it feels like when you hit in the power play, they're not doing that. Like as a fan, when we see power play, we don't even get excited anymore. It's like, okay, whatever. We roll our eyes, like you said, Mike. And it seems like, I have more, I'm ready to post a goal gif on the DucksNPucks Twitter when they're on the penalty kill in the power play. Power play, I can just, go upstairs and get some popcorn or pour another beer and not really worry about the Ducks scoring. At this point, I'm inclined to say throw someone like Holzer, Grant, and Rowney on the line and just see what they do. Or you know what, screw it. Pass the puck back to Gibson or Miller and have them fire it from their own goal line and try to get a goal. I mean, hey, you know what, screw it. If any of you guys listening, the fans want to try to jump on the power play, sign a contract, why not sign one of the fans listening? They might do a little bit more than the Ducks have been this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's been so bad on the power play. I mean, you're right. It's like we should take volunteers out of the stands. And I laugh when I go to the games because as soon as they get a power play, the people that sit by me or the people that I run to are like, yeah, can we just decline this? Can we just go back to 5-on-5? Because 5-on-5, we're a decent team. The power play, I don't know what it is with this team. They just, we talked a little bit about it as far as changing up personnel and getting in front of the net, being a little bit too predictable. But I think part of it's just mentality too. And we've talked about that earlier in the season, and that's kind of the second part of this segment. But if you look at like the coaching and the team mentality, unfortunately with this team, they're not like the old school Ducks. This team, if they get down by multiple goals, they seem to just fold. If they're down by one goal, they usually can fight back and tie it up and whatnot. But we don't really see the comeback kids anymore. We talk about the comeback on Catella. They scored those 3 goals in the final minutes against Edmonton. And you remember a couple years ago, they were doing that against a bunch of teams. And now just this season, it's like they get down by 2 or more, and it's like the game's over. And then conversely, they get a lead, and no lead is safe. And we saw that in the Florida game. I mean, they were up by 4 goals with less than 2 minutes to go in the second period, and they lose that game. I think a lot of it is mental, Eddie. I just think this whole rebuilding thing, retooling thing, I mean, if that's what we're doing, fine, but I'm tired of like, some of the fans will look at a game when they lose. They're like, well, we're just rebuilding or retooling. Okay, I get that, but when you're up 4-0 at almost the end of the second period, I don't care if you got a new coach and a bunch of young players. You have to win that game, period. And the Ducks didn't do that. So to me, it's just mental. Some of this is that they either get behind by a lot and they just say, forget it, we're out. Or they get a lead like this one, 4-goal lead, and we're good. They don't play that 60-minute game. We've harped on that too at nauseum in this season. But those are some of the things I've noticed with this team is their mental approach to the game. And yes, there are younger players, and some of that they're going to develop later on and not have that mentality. But overall, even with the rebuild or retooling, this team can still be competitive, and they've still played some winnable games where they lost, especially like this Jets game. They didn't even get a goal, and they could have. I mean, the Jets aren't playing that great this season. I mean, they have a winning record, but they're not the best team in the league. And for me, Eddie, I just think a lot of it's mental for this team this season.
Oh, yeah. I think they already had it in their mind that they're not retooling. I think it's a rebuild mode, and I think every player has that mentality. Ducks don't have any identity this season. Like you said, we had the comeback kids. We had the Dirty Ducks. We had an identity of who they are. I have no idea what identity the Ducks have right now and who they are this season. It just seems like they have an infamous identity of not scoring on the power play, or if they go down by a goal or two, they just tuck their tails between their legs and just take it. And it's just there's no fight in it, and it's frustrating. And you know what? I get it. You guys are just retooling word is just a little fancy word to say rebuild because they don't want to lose season ticket holders and they don't want to lose fans from this. But you know what? It is what it is, and just they're in a stage right now where it doesn't seem like they're going to get better and they're going to improve. It's only going to be worse, and the only thing we can hope for is we could be above the Kings, and personally, we could be above the Wild because I hate that team. But that Florida game was kind of the heartbreaker and kind of the nail in the coffin at that time. You're up 4 goals. A team that came back from being down 4-0. They did it against the Bruins, and they played the Bruins. Bruins went up, 4-0 in the second period, and then Florida comes back and scores 4 goals in the third, and then wins in overtime. like you knew this team was capable of coming back, but it seems like once the Florida Panthers scored a couple goals and scored the third goal, the Ducks just kind of just held back and didn't really fight. That's the like getting frustrating. And I want to mention the Philadelphia game from last season, that frustrating game. And this is probably like the most frustrating game, I think, a little bit more than that Philadelphia game. It's just really bad hockey's played, and I get frustrated because this team has so much potential. Yes, we have a lot of young kids, we have a lot of young guns, but they prove that they can be factors. Look at the Arizona game. It just they're not. The whole team in general is just suffering from just, I don't know. There's just I don't want to say lack of heart to professional hockey players, and they have a lot of heart, but something's going on in this locker room, and it has to change. And yeah, I get it. If they're not going to, be a Stanley Cup team, they're not going to be even a playoff team. They're going to be bottom stands. Cool, I can accept that. I can get it. I'll still watch every game. I'll still go to as many games as I can. But I want to see at least a little bit of heart from this team, and not just put their backs against the wall and put their bellies up.
Yeah, and I think part of it, too, you hit it, is they're not playing necessarily bad throughout the season. It's been more inconsistent. They've had good games. I mean, they played the Islanders, who hadn't lost a game in regulation in a month and a half, and they beat them 3-0. They played the Stanley Cup champs, and they beat them, too. I mean, pretty much because of Derek Grant, but still, they beat them in St. Louis, too. So there is spurts of that where we see the team or glimpses of them going out and doing these things. I think a lot of it, too, is they can't finish some of their plays. We've seen Max Jones get close sometimes. We've seen Sam Steele get close other times. Even Troy Terry had that play in the Winnipeg game. He was a couple feet away from the net, and he does the Getzlaf imitation and passes the puck instead of shooting it. I mean, it was like, come on, man! Like they're getting chances for sure. It's not like they're going out there and they're just playing terrible completely. They're just not finishing the plays. But I also think part of it, you got to put some of this on Dallas Eakins. We got kind of critical of him. Not challenging some of the plays that we talked about earlier in the season, the one against the San Jose Sharks. We saw a similar play in this Winnipeg game for the Ducks, where the Ducks didn't get the goal, and he couldn't challenge that because the ref said the whistle was blown, which, whatever. We already went over that in the first segment. I'm not going to revisit it. But they just haven't been able to quite get it done. And I feel some of it is when they're playing Eakins, his strategies, he wants to roll four lines. He wants to roll all the defensive players. And I get that. When the game starts out that way, that's fine. You want to get everybody out there. You want everybody to play, have a bunch of equal minutes. However, when you're down a bunch of goals, you shouldn't be putting your fourth line out there. You shouldn't be putting out your third defensive pairing. You need to be putting out the guys that are going to stop the other team. Manson, Lindholm, Fowler. Of course, Manson's out. But I'm just saying, you got to put out your top guys. And if you're trying to get goals and you're behind, you got to put out the top two lines. You got to put out the Getzlaf line and the Henrique line, whoever else you got lined up at the winger, fine. But you're going to have to do that at some point in the game. You're going to have to change stuff up. You may even have to change up the personnel on the lines. And we've seen Eakins do that here and there, but I think he's too concerned about trying to give everybody equal ice time. If the game's tied or within a goal, I get it. But once the Ducks start getting behind, you're going to have to start figuring out stuff and do some in-game changes. And I just really haven't seen those, unfortunately. And just critical mistakes, putting out, like we said, Holzer and Larson together at a key moment in the game, or even playing them together. You can't do that. You've got to get out of that mindset. We've got to have Del Zotto back in there. Branson's filled in. He's done great. He's been standing up for the Ducks, like we talked about in the Capitals game. With Hathaway, we saw it in this Jets game when Kasha got knocked down, and that's what you got to do. And I think he's been a good addition, so that's helped out. But the strategy, I don't know, Eddie. I think you talked about it before. It's like maybe Eakins is maybe just too cautious. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it seems at times that he's just his second stint in the NHL. That he's too cautious and a little afraid to make some moves that are questionable, challenging plays, which he should have, and thinking it's gonna, where the Ducks are kind of spiraling down at times, and he's gonna lose his job, and he's too afraid, and he wants to be that player's coach too, and wants to be popular to everyone running the four lines. I get it, it's cool, but you know what? You're still the head coach. Your main responsibility is not players' feelings. It's not anyone's feelings. The only thing your job is to get wins and to, coach a team that's going to be the best possible team out there. And I'm not saying he's a bad coach, and I'm nowhere near saying or speculating that he should be fired at all, because, like I said before, it's going to take some time. It's not going to be a first-year kind of thing where it's like, okay, if the Ducks don't improve this season, fire him and get someone. No, it's not like that. It's going to take some time, but I think he needs to. I think he might be worrying about his job a little bit and his second time in NHL, and he might not get a third. But he has to challenge those things, especially in San Jose. That was obvious. And if anyone's watching or listening, I know we have league news and a lot of other fans that aren't Ducks fans that listen to the show. Hopefully, listen to the whole show. But you can agree too. That should have been one of those calls that should have been challenged. Like, you're pushing a player's pad and to the net, and the puck crosses the line. That was goalie interference. That's textbook goalie interference. But he just chose not to do it. And I don't know if that would have changed the whole game and momentum of it, but at least he went out there and tried. So I hope he's not put in a position that he's walking on eggshells, because I just want him to do his thing and be the coach that he was last season in San Diego and had that success, and still be a player's coach, but then know at times where, okay, we're down 2 goals. You have to put players out there that can put the puck, that have the skill, that could put the puck back to the net, and that are ready to do it. Someone that's on fire, that's hot, that scored already, or that hit the post a couple times, that just itching for that goal, to put them out there and not put players like, like Grant or Rowney. And no disrespect to players like that. Yeah, they had their time, but they're not as skilled as the Silverbergs or the Rakals, or even, Getzlaf this season that's actually playing great and putting that puck in back of the net.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. It's just trying to adjust on the fly. And I think he has done it at times, but at other times he's kind of just like, okay, we're going to keep rolling out the 4 lines. It's like, no, man, we need to change this up a little bit. If you got to play the top lines more, play the top lines more. I mean, he's not overused Getzlaf as much as maybe some of our past coaches have, but sometimes it needs to be done. In the final minutes too, even defensively, like we talked about. If you're on a key face-off, you need to put out the best guys. And if the guys are tired and you want to put out your best guy, then call the timeout. Give them that break, give them a little bit of extra water or Gatorade, and get them out there. I mean, that's just some things that it seems like have been lacking. He's been really hit and miss. So it's not to criticize him. I'm trust me, I'm more happy to have him than Randy Carlyle. With Randy Carlyle, the locker room was a disaster. The morale was terrible. We all know that. That's not a surprise. Obviously, this team, the morale is better. I just feel that there's some adjustments that Aikens could make, and this team could be just a little bit more. I feel like they're just a little bit away from being more of a playoff type team. They're not going to be a Stanley Cup contending team. We already know that. We've already talked about that. But they can be a little bit more competitive on a consistent basis. And I think that's part of the issue. So hopefully they'll get it figured out. We're going to talk about some trade stuff too. Whether or not we think, the Ducks will do some of that. We've talked about it in some of the previous shows, so you can go back and listen to that. We're going to go to the last segment now. We're going to talk about the league news. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, especially in the coaching world. I'll let Eddie break it down, and I know he wants to talk a little bit about our partnership with the OC Animal Care before we start the segment.
Oh, definitely. I want to thank the OC Animal Care for allowing us to partner up with them. It's one of those things that are near and dear to my heart and also Mike's heart. Just animals that are just, they need loving homes, and who knows what they've been through, being stray dogs or the abuse that they probably felt. It's just good, and it feels good to actually try to help, and I wish I could help every single one of them. Unfortunately, I can't, but just us promoting it and just posting a post and talking about it, hopefully it throws the word out there. And if we can just save 1, 2, or 3 and maybe more, I mean, that's all great for me. This month, the month of December, for the OC Animal Care, they're doing a photo with Santa. So every Saturday in December from 11 to 3 p.m. they're having all donations for one of your pets to take a picture with Santa, which is cool. Hopefully you don't bite Santa. But yeah, they give you a photo. They give you a digital one to share. Donations. If you don't have a pet, you're thinking about it, I check them out. I don't care if you check OC Animal Care. If you go to whatever you're listening to, a different state, different country, check out them. But it's gonna be cool. I do have a couple dog collars and bananas for pets. So if you do end up adopting, let me know, and we will send you something out just as a thank you, something that little that we can add to that. And yeah, that's it. So I want to thank the OC Animal Care for that. And now we're gonna get to the league news. I do want to talk about, before I get into the coaching thing, which has been really hot in the NHL. I want to talk about Bobby Ryan. Bobby Ryan's taken some time off from the team. And he's joining the player assistance program. I'm not sure what's going on with him, if it's drugs or alcohol, but there's something that's, kind of a mental disorder that's going on where he has to take time off and get his head straight. This is really unfortunate. He's a fan favorite in Anaheim. He's a fan favorite for me. We have mutual friends that played against him when he played in Narch in San Jose. He's a stand-up guy. I got to talk to him a few times. He remembered me before I left the Army and then after. So I have that close connection with them. And whatever he's going through, I just wish him all the best of luck. And it's not hard, especially when you have a lot of problems in life. Sometimes you tend to go through alcohol or drugs. I had an unfortunate where I got, wrapped up in alcohol a lot because I had a lot of problems and I just didn't want to discuss them and talk about them. And I always felt that I could just do it myself and, I'm not weak-minded. But it really took some soul-searching and for me to realize that, hey, I had to stop drinking and I can't, mask my problems with alcohol. So, some people are saying, negative things that, well, he's a millionaire, he makes this money. It doesn't matter how much money you make. When it comes to a mental disorder, we're all just the same and we're all put in the same playing field. And I really hope that he gets the help he needs and he comes back and he can be a better person for himself. If you guys haven't checked out his Players Tribune article that he wrote, he's gone through a lot of shit. And it's stuff that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. But I wish him the best of luck. And Mike, I don't know if you want to say something about Bobby Ryan. You played for the Ducks and you have a connection to him too, before I get into more league news.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, in my real job, I guess, I've worked with people that have issues, whether they're, veterans like you, Eddie, or they're just, average Joe citizens that have issues with alcohol or drug abuse or any kind of mental illness or PTSD or whatnot. So we don't know exactly what it is that he's dealing with at this time. And even if I did know, I probably wouldn't want to say until he was comfortable saying, so I'd hold back on that. But I just wish him the best. He was a fan favorite in Anaheim, like you said. Obviously, Ottawa likes having him too. And I hope he just gets the recovery and stuff that he needs. And it, like you said, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor or what race or religion or background you're from. Mental illness affects everybody, and also young or old too. It doesn't matter. So I'm just hoping that he gets whatever treatment he needs and can get his situation straightened out on and off the ice. With that, I'll let you go into all the coaching news because I know. A lot of crazy stuff's going on. Another former person connected to the Ducks, Mike Babcock's in the news, and all kinds of crazy stuff going on with him as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to talk about one thing real quick. The Blues had a suspension. Bertuzzo got suspended for Arvidsson. It was a bad play. He deserved the 5 games, maybe a little bit more. He cross-checked Arvidsson by the front of the net, which, okay, he got a penalty for that. But then as Arvidsson's trying to get up, clearly he was hurt on the play. Bertuzzo goes ahead and checks him right in the lower back, and he's out 4 to 6 weeks now. Bertuzzo got 5-game suspension for that, and I'm all about hard hitting and physical hockey. That was a gutless and disgusting play, and he deserved a 5, maybe a little bit more. Let's switch gears now to the coaching. Mike Babcock was fired. Sheldon Keefe took over as new head coach. Former player Mike Commodore went out and really went off on Mike Babcock. I'm pretty sure anyone of the hockey world have seen some of the comments of calling him a failure and a total prick, and he was happy. He's been waiting for this moment for years. He totally went off on Babcock. Babcock actually did someone said a story on him. He asked Mitch Marner when he was a rookie which players are the most laziest in the room. It was supposed to be confidential. Mitch Marner, being a rookie, scared when I said his thoughts. Babcock read that and to the team and said what he said. What wasn't supposed to be disclosed. And it just turns out that it seems like a lot of players are coming out and saying Babcock was an asshole. I know Commodore's problems happened when he was with the Mighty Ducks. Back in the day, he had issues with Tim. They went at it. He ended up getting traded. He met later with Tim when he was a member of the Detroit Red Wings, and Commodore thought it was going to be different. Like, they're older. He's coming in more established. Nope. He had that same resentment for him, and they went from there. And then that led to other players. One of the players, Akeem, accusing, which was validated because head coach of the Calgary Flames, Bill Peters, admitted to it, about dropping racial slurs in the locker room. And one of them's quote saying, "I'm sick of hearing that N-word shit. I'm sick of hearing this N effing other N's in the ass stuff." Bill Peters came out and said that, he was ashamed. He apologized. He went to the locker room right after to try to apologize, and he realized what he was wrong. The player, Akeem, and a few other players on that team in the AHL came back and said, no, that wasn't the case, and he's lying. Well, Bill Peters ended up resigning, and you know what? I think it's good. Someone like that's going to demean players, and I get it. If you're a rookie player, you're going to go through some crap. I was in the military. I worked in a law enforcement, background when I was younger. And I get, not hazing, but you're the boot. And you're the low man on the totem pole. But I've never really experienced something disgusting like that. And him being called out, I get it. He's an older coach, and he's been around for a while. And 10 years ago is something. But, okay, if you did make a mistake and you thought you had a different mentality, come out and say it. Like, you know what, I was stupid before. I grew up with a different family that just looked down on people that weren't my same skin color. I've had that in the Army too. A guy telling me that I was his favorite wetback. I'm like, you can't really it's not really acceptable to say, but he just told me that was his upbringing. But it doesn't matter. Like, when I was in the Army, he was my brother, and I would have defended him and had his back, just like I had anyone else that wore that green uniform or whatever uniform you wore. If you're a Marine wearing the tan or dark blue in the Navy or Coast Guard or whatever, I still had your back. It's really unfortunate that this story, again, after the Don Cherry, the Jess Allen, and now this, is trending, not the hockey world, but the sports world, and it's really giving hockey that negativity that we don't need. Man, I'm saying hockey is a sport. It's a beautiful sport. It saved my life. I don't know where I would have been without hockey. I probably would have been done. My mental issues, I probably would have just not been in this world anymore. But hockey gave me so much and opened the world up for so much opportunities. And I really hope this doesn't deter players of even black or Hispanic, Asian, whatever race you are, players. I mean, you can be the little blue guys in Avatar. Like, as long as you like the sport, I mean, that's all that matters to me. And it's just really unfortunate that these stories can leak in the sports world, but you don't see stories of players doing good and doing justice and leaking in the sports world. But it's just one of those things where, hopefully it can blow over and we bring more awareness and education to people, and we can really stand by it and let everyone know that hockey is not just a little hashtag you do for fun, but no, this sport is for everyone that can cherish their values and honor and can play this sport.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Hockey is for everybody. And I think the whole thing with Bill Peters is just ridiculous. Just because someone plays music you don't like in the locker room, I mean, you can maybe voice your opinion that you don't like it, but I don't know why you have to drop the F-bomb or the N-word and part of that, voicing of your displeasure. I just don't get that. There's just no room for that, period. And I'm kind of surprised about Babcock. That to me, when he got fired initially, some people were talking about, maybe the Ducks should try to look at him and whatnot when the news first came out. And then, after more and more of the news came out, all of a sudden, like we talked about, Mike Commodore came on there, was saying all this negative stuff about how he was treated poorly in Anaheim. And then he met up again with Babcock in Detroit and was treated poorly there. And then, then as kind of the floodgates opened, other people were starting to say stuff too. That just surprised me. I mean, didn't have a clue about that part. I mean, we remember Babcock being on the Ducks and taking them to the Stanley Cup final back in the day, the Mighty Duck days, as Eddie talked about. So obviously with all the stuff going on with him, he's pretty much done. Bill Peters, at least he did apologize and he's done, but he took it too far. It's just stuff that you just can't do. It's just plain and simple. Like Eddie said, hockey is for everyone. We try to grow the sport, regardless of whatever your background is. Even doing this podcast, when I started it, 4 or 5 years ago, I was surprised at the number of people that listen to this show that aren't from Canada or from the U.S. There are people around the world. I mean, Europe too. I mean, we know hockey is prominent over there, but a lot of European countries listen to the show. There's people in Japan that listen to the show, Australia, South America, Mexico. I mean, there's people all over that like the sport of hockey, and it opened my eyes back then when I used to, I was all happy when I got like 5 people to listen to the show. I was like, oh, great. And when the show started kind of getting a little bit more steam, and I would see through our website, the Podomatic website, it kind of shows you where the listeners are throughout the world. It's amazing that this sport reaches so many people. And, the fact that it does that, we need to embrace everybody as well. And I mean, we're talking about hockey, but it's all sports in general, but specifically hockey, of course, because that's our show. And I posted too, if you saw on Facebook, that I'm thankful for everybody that I've ever met through this. I know Eddie and I met through this. A lot of people I see at the games I met through this. I had a big group of people that went to the Black Friday game. We've been doing that for the last couple years. And yeah, the outcome wasn't what we wanted, but to have, 24 something people come together and hang out on Friday, watch the game. We all went out to eat dinner afterwards and just, talk about sports and everything like that. It's a big positive. So these stories here, unfortunately, it's something that we have to deal with. And I think we've gotten better as a society in general. But of course, there's more work to do, Eddie. And I know you also wanted to mention briefly a little bit about Daryl Sutter. We can't really go into a lot of depth about it, but there may be some stuff coming down the pipeline on him as well, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. And just to go off of what you said, we appreciate everyone that follows, that comments. And Mike, I thank you. I'm thankful for you, especially Thanksgiving just passed. I'm really thankful that, I jumped on Twitter and I bought a shirt and then we just ended up talking just randomly because I was in the military and we had that connection. And then it seems that we had a lot more in common than we thought. And now I can call you my brother. It was great. Like the hospitality you and your wife have shown me is just nothing short of amazing. Like I said, you're my brother and you're my Timu or my Korea, and I'm your Timu and I'm your Korea. I don't care which one we are. I'll be Steve Ruchin at that point. But we have that. But yeah, fortunately, Daniel Corsello, he was a bad boy, the former grinder / enforcer. He's been advocating, a lot of the CTE head trauma stuff, and he went out and said that he called out the Ducks advisor Daryl Sutter as being a coach in question, that abusive behavior. I'm not sure how far this is going to go or what he's saying. He hasn't really validated anything, and I haven't heard anything from anyone else that's validated his statement. I did reach out to him on social media because he did make that accusation, and as DucksNPucks and as a journalist that I call myself because I am studying that, I have a responsibility to look into that and find out more of it. He hasn't reached out to me yet. I hope he does. If not, then it's just going to be a one-person statement without anyone validating it. And I hope it's not the case. I hope, he's been known to, over-exaggerate some certain things. So, I mean, we'll just go from there on putting that out, just because it's news and it's, he's part of the Ducks, Sutter is. So, any Ducks-related news we're going to put out, we're going to share it because it's our responsibility to do that, to inform fans of what's going on. Moving forward from that, we do have some good news before we get into some trade rumors, but a guy named Kessler and Biesca, they're actually doing a podcast. They recorded a couple shows. They're going to put them out, and they're going to see what's going on. Oh, my God. I hope it's unrated. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun listening to both of them. And you know what? Hopefully we can try to get them on DucksNPucks, and they can share their experiences. It'll probably be an unrated show because I don't want to censor any of them. I don't think you want to either, Mike. Because there's going to be too many little beeps you have to press for the way they go about business. But that should be a fun one. And speaking about podcasts, I did buy one of the Pink Whitney bottles from the Spit and Chicklets podcast. Ryan Whitney, a former Ducks defenseman player, he made his own drink. I suggest you try it out. We tried it out on Friday together. We posted that picture on social media. Got a lot of positive responsive and likes, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, I'll let you talk about your experience and your first drink of Pink Whitney, Mike, before we get into Taylor Hall and other trade rumors.
Yeah, the Spitting Chicklets, podcast is definitely a favorite of mine and pretty popular out there. So Eddie had the Pink Whitney. We went to the game against Winnipeg, of course, and like I said, I had a bunch of people there. And then Eddie came over to the Ducks and Pucks headquarters, aka my house, and we hung out afterwards. But I highly recommend it if you like vodka. It's very smooth. It's very good. We took a shot of it. I also kind of made a Pink Whitney Moscow Mule, I guess, if you'll say. It's kind of one of my drinks. So no complaints. It was great. And like you said, too, if Kessler and BX have this show going, that's going to be freaking awesome. It's another podcast I would highly recommend and tune in for. So with that, we'll kind of finish up the show here. Really, we talked about trade rumors before on some of the previous shows, and then the trade rumors with Taylor Hall have heated up again. Pierre LeBrun tweeted out that, quote, hearing that the Devils have started to listen from teams on Taylor Hall doesn't mean they will for sure trade him, but given their place in the standings and the magnitude of a potential deal, their GM is now in listening mode. So, and he goes on to talk about, too, that it may not be till closer to the trade deadline, depending on an extension and whatnot. So his name's out there. Before we talked about Goodbranson, and that happened I think 30 minutes after we posted the article. That was pretty crazy. But this one, I'm giving it a hard no. And it's not because I don't want it to happen. I think bringing Hall in could help this team. But I just don't see it getting done because I don't think the Ducks would want to offer a whole lot. I think if they were going to try to go after him, some of the players that we mentioned before in trade rumors were Nick Ritchie, Daniel Sprong. We've talked a little bit about Larson, too, with the way he's been playing lately, or maybe some draft picks. But I think if you're going to go after Taylor Hall, it's going to command more than that. I don't think the Ducks are willing to give that up. Plus, I don't know how much that's going to help the team this year. We don't want to just make the playoffs and go after a big-name player that's going to be a rental. If they did get him for extension, that would be great. But then, like I said, it's the same issue. The salary cap, there is room there. The Ducks have, like we said, extra money to spend with Eves and Kessler on the LTIR. But they're also going to have to pay a little bit more for Corey Perry next season. So there's some things that they got to think about and work out. I'm not surprised. I think Taylor Hall will be traded by the trade deadline. But for me, Eddie, I just don't really see him coming to Anaheim.
Yeah, same here. I mean, it'll be really shocking and surprising if Taylor Hall stays with the Devils past the trade deadline. He seems like he wants to test the free agency. His agent already went out and said that he's not going to sign an extension this season. He wants to wait until after the season's over. And that just kind of tells me that he wants to test free agency. I don't blame him either. A player. That's a unique opportunity for players to actually be able to, have teams fight over him. Like if you're a high school player, you have a bunch of colleges trying to recruit you. They bring you, show you a good time and do that. I see him as a short time solution if the Ducks did went ahead and picked him up. Yeah, he's going to increase goal scoring. He's going to add that elite threat that we need, and he'll solidify that left wing top spot. But chances of him staying, no, I think he wants to go on a team that's competitive and is going to win. And he's going to command a top dollar come his deal in July. So I think it'd be a hard pass. I read rumors about the Avalanche have been the front runners, and there's something going on with them in the next few weeks. I just can't see it for the Ducks. And honestly, I wouldn't want the Ducks to go out and throw, a top players out there. It's going to take a Silverberg or Raquel kind of player to even get the ball rolling over there in New Jersey. They're going to want that. And I don't think we should be letting players like that go right now. Let's find our identity and find out who we are as a hockey team and go from there. This Ducks team's going to be competitive in a couple of years, and that's what I'm looking forward to, not just giving up assets and having a temporary solution, just to have, barely squeaking in the playoffs or barely getting to, a point out of the playoffs and getting a mid-draft pick instead of we can just get a top draft pick.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see it happening. I mean, like I said, not with Anaheim, I don't see it happening, but I think overall that will happen. So with that, we'll wrap up the show. Don't forget, we're having a Black Friday sale ourselves. You can check out tpnhockey.com. A lot of stuff's marked down to just $2 on there, so you can check that out. Also, for the Ducks and Pucks gear, you can go to onthevolley.com/ducksandpucks. We have stuff on there. If you use the code BFDNP, you can get 30% off stuff there as well. So check those out. Like we said, we appreciate everybody listening to the show all around the world. Hockey's for everybody. We'll be back probably in a week. The Ducks are going to be playing the Kings this week, and then they have a few days off. They're going to be playing the Capitals. Hopefully some games that'll get them motivated, and they'll play a little bit better. But expect us to be back probably sometime next weekend. And let's go Ducks.